The left is always inclined to look on the grim side of things. Always inclined to look on the grim side of things. The cup is always half empty. Until you point out, look, it's half full. It doesn't look so bad.
Welcome to Political Gingervitis, the crazy and zany podcast for progressives who need a laugh. I'm your hostess with the mostest, Andrew Stewart, and this week we're going to try to put a smile on your face and maybe a few thoughts in your head.
Mission to Moscow, the behind-the-scenes story of every world-shaking crisis of our day.
It is wrong, it is unwise, unchristian for us to refuse help to the courageous people of the Soviet Union. Tonight before Moscow, Leningrad, and Sevastopol, they are holding the very ramparts of our civilization.
You might have heard that I am, in fact, a stooge of the Kremlin. That's right. Apparently, the CIA and the press linked to the Clinton campaign and the Democratic Party has been spreading around the idea that anyone who has ever been opposed to war with Russia, which seems to be an ever-present threat given the geopolitical configuration currently, is in fact an agent of espionage. One of the publications that I have previously written for has been listed amongst those involved in spreading around what is called fake news. So I would just like to ask the obvious question, President Putin, please send more borscht, will you? Because I definitely could use some more, and perhaps also a little of that great Siberian caviar that you are so famous for around the world. In other aspects of this question, it becomes quite interesting, of course, because I've always found his pectorals to be just frankly luxurious, and I am looking forward to a moment where I can have an audience with his greatness.
No, I mean, I've never identified as the alt-right. The press seems determined to crown me the queen of it. All I've done is give them a fair hearing in the press. I think that white identity and white nationalism is a little misleading. I think it's more accurate to say that the alt-right cares about Western supremacy rather than white supremacy.
We hear this a lot from scientists, you hear this a lot in particular from female scientists, but the fact is that there is some reason to suppose that there is an advantage to being a man in certain subjects. There's reason to suppose that gender essentialism, biological determinism, whatever you want to call it, the fact that there are male brains and female brains, may indeed have some basis in science. Now, this is sort of thrown out of the window completely by feminists and female academics who just refuse to accept that there's any reason whatsoever why there might be a gender imbalance.
Milo Yiannopoulos is the ghastly Twitter troll / bimbo who calls himself a journalist for the white supremacist tabloid website Breitbart. For those of you who have had the blessing not to experience his song and goose step routine, it is as if Roy Cohn and Satan made a hellspawn and rocketed it out to the surface of the earth so to hatch and further desecrate what was left of human decency in our society. I'm not going to bother quoting his awful writing, mostly because I've seen grade school children using green crayons on green construction paper that seems like Shakespeare in comparison to this hack. He is quite literally an insult to the English language, if not the act of vocalization itself. There are so many more things I'd prefer to reading his cut-and-paste nonsense sentences, including a root canal, brain cancer, and yes, I dare say it, watching the Yankees win a baseball game. I like to think I am a First Amendment absolutist libertarian, but then I read Milo Yiannopoulos and started having second thoughts. But on top of the fact he carries on like a third-grade brat and has all the matching writing skill, there's just the plain fact that I don't think Milo is actually gay. He plays identity politics games about feeling afraid of Islamic teachings so to bash Muslim, and dresses like a typical gaudy bimbo. But I think it is all for show, a total fraud, and here's why. There's the fact he opposes a woman's right to choose. Besides the fact he's the most public example of why Roe v. Wade must never be overturned, any gay man who is serious about sodomy knows that laws against homosexuality and abortion are rooted in a fundamental violation of a person's right to privacy. What two men do in the privacy of their own home is protected by the same principle protecting what a woman and her doctor discuss and choose to do. So obviously Milo just doesn't actually want to have sex because he's not actually gay. Or we could talk about his anti-communism. This is idiotic because the modern gay rights movement was founded by a communist named Harry Hay, who used the Leninist analysis of national liberation to frame the argument in favor of gay liberation. Hay was also the champion of men wearing pearl necklaces, roughly akin to the style of our neoconservative Uranian. You certainly can point out the flaws of Stalin, but gay liberation has always been a small c communist project. Since Milo is anti-communist, this means he is anti-gay. Therefore, yet again, another sign Milo is faking being gay. But we should also probably just hash through his homophobia. There are multiple instances one can look at his statements and find either a blatant case of self-loathing or just plain old-fashioned gay bashing. It's quite simple. Milo has a big-time loathing of all things Islamic, which would include elements of Muslim culture that are far more progressive than the West has ever been. Rumi's poetry is seen by many as containing a sort of eros that is only seen in same-sex settings. The idea of a gay man hating Islam is frankly ridiculous because homosexual subculture has elements indebted to the Muslim world. I'm on to your fakery, Milo. Anyway, today we're going to have as a guest Ray Rickman. He is based in Providence with the nonprofit Stages of Freedom, which celebrates the legacy of African American stage and artistic efforts. He will talk about his time knowing a mentor of his from Detroit, where he grew up, named Grace Lee Boggs. And we will discuss some of the things that very well could be the definition of the next American Revolution.
In the Black movement, when we were demanding first-class citizenship, we were saying we were being denied that. We were very ethical, but we wanted more than that.
Right.
We wanted to become part of the people who took responsibility for the country.
So, Ray, Grace Lee Boggs was originally born in Rhode Island, and she was notable for a lot of fantastic things. Give me just first your preliminary thoughts on why it's worth taking a look at her most recent works, especially.
Well, we should go back to, this little fact that she was born in Rhode Island. It's very interesting. She's born on Westminster Street, and her father had a restaurant where Kresge's was forever, near Dorrance Street. So it's just absolutely fascinating. I walk by that site all the time, and I get a real kick out of the fact that she was born there. And we don't acknowledge it or take any credit or, try to make her a citizen. And I guess you're not a citizen if you go away and don't come back. I don't know. But I still get a kick out of the fact that she was born here. And I didn't know that, for 10 years after I came here. So anyway, I just want to share that because I like the idea that we, that we have some strong, people who were born here. Now, her book, The Next American Revolution, which I have a copy of, and I haven't really paid attention. I get a kick out of Danny Glover writing the forward to it. It's always interesting who's turns into a good person. So, or who is a good person. I don't know if I said that right. So she, very, very, she's two people or three. I don't know the first person, but, she is, she and her husband are a team. And that's when I, knew them. And he was, I don't know how to say this. Anyway, they were a team. And, the two of them came together. So it was fascinating. And then later, she was, she wasn't a teen because he was gone. And she did slightly different things. And a lot of this has to do with Detroit.
Very active in the union movement.
Yes. Now, both of them were. There was Detroit was hotbed of this stuff. Kind of starting in the 50s and then continuing to go, kind of big time. Now, I told you as a teenager, probably 14 to 18, I used to go to their house all the time.
Okay, I did not know that.
Oh, yeah. And I didn't do anything. They had a big windowsill, and I used to sit on it, especially when I was 14, 15, and just take it all in, because it was unbelievable, who would not be at their house. Because she had encounters with people from all over the world.
Right.
And half the time I didn't know who they were. I just knew to be impressed. The man was from India or whatever. And it wasn't a more international place to set foot. They might have been, but I wasn't privy to it. But as a kid, I met Walter Reuther and May Reuther at their house. And I just thought that was the coolest thing in the world, that the head of the UAW was at their house.
Mm-hmm. And so she is part of the Johnson Forest group, correct? Are you familiar with that?
Yeah. I don't know a great deal, but I do know that.
So CLR James,
yeah.
The woman whose very long Russian name I am going to slaughter right now, Donetskaya, and they have a very interesting set of ideas dealing with this notion of revolution and what it means to be in the working class. And, they have come out of this whole milieu of opposition to the Soviet Union and Stalin's stuff, and then break off from the Trotsky thing. And they basically formulate this idea that the working class is a revolutionary group, and, without any sort of effort, it has the capacity to change the world. And CLR James writes a pamphlet in particular called Every Cook Can Govern, where
right.
He talks...
You sent it to me and I read it because I had never seen it.
Right, and so they're talking about how this notion of government being separate or differentiated from your everyday citizen is antithetical to what is really possible in this world. So where do you see her new work coming in with those sorts of things?
Well, it's fascinating because, in the middle is, CLR James and all those people. I'm trying to remember, there was someone else that they were associated with who was very, what's his name? A. Philip Randolph.
Exactly.
And who I also met.
Okay.
And so they were connected to all those folks. And, I assume, these Marxist, Leninist values were all over the place, but not really.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I had come later. This is the 60s, and they were transitioning already. Mm-hmm. I met them. I forgot to tell you this. So I led junior high school walkout. We were in a school built for 2,000 kids, and it had 4,000. And we had 8 minutes for lunch. and we ate our lunch on a tray standing up. It was, you can't even dream this stuff up. And everything was awful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the classes were cut in half because they didn't have enough classrooms. And you had 12 minutes between classes, mainly so you could stand in the hallway 5 or 6 times a day, waiting to get into your next class. And finally, they eliminated gym because they had to divide the gym up and use it for classroom space. And that's when I led the walkout. This is Foch Junior High School, FLCH, named after Marshall Foch, the great, if you agree. But anyway, the French general for World War I. And I found out about him. This is what gets me in trouble. You know, you find out about people and you want to imitate them. And, you know, he's the kind of man who stood up, so I decided I'd stand up, and I gave a big speech. And to my surprise, a couple hundred students walked out with me, and the rest of them got in the windows in the school and watched us. And, of course, the Detroit police came and beat me half to death, and only me for leading the walkout, and took me to the police station. And Jimmy, I remember meeting him, they came to the police station, brought a lawyer, and got me out. And that's when I met them. You know, it was like, you know, they were my saviors.
Oh, wow.
I'd never met them in my life. I didn't know who they were. And I was I was a 15-year-old shell-shocked kid. And I really was appreciative, you know, and am, you know, for kind of whole lifetime, because they were radicals, and they just, you know, that was their thing: intervene, protect progressive folks, and even at their own peril. And that's when I met them. Foch Junior High School walkout.
Okay.
And then they got the ACLU involved. They got, you name it, and they got them involved. And then would invite me to their house and probably help my thinking. I'm not going to say what you want me to say.
I understand what you're saying.
But helped my thinking a lot. Because, you know, inner city kids don't have access to progressive literature or thoughts or people. They really don't. And I have thought for years, and I may get around to it yet, and I thought I would sneak into it by inviting some kind of black radicals. And I don't mean, but they've got to be wide-ranging in their political thought, not narrow-minded. Or narrow-focused. That's a better term than narrow-minded. But I am bothered about our lack of education. And, you know, and this is true of everybody, all these white folks, working-class white people voting for right-wing billionaire. That's our failure to present them with alternatives and to give them information. Both Jimmy and Grace, they were pamphleteers, and they were always putting out information. You know, I got my first James book from them, you know, C.L.R. James. I don't even remember what it was, but, you know, it was a little small paperback, and it had come from London. And, you know, I was looking for it the other day. When I missed the interview with you, I was looking for it on Saturday.
Oh, yeah.
And I have no clue. It's in some box someplace. But can you imagine reading C.L.R. James and you're 15 years old?
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, you were, but you know, I'm talking.
Well, I was. Yeah, I totally understand what you mean.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the rest of us. And, you know, I can remember discussing with her African-American communists, you know, because there used to be some in the Great Depression, and she had known some of these people. So that was interesting. And she wasn't promoting it. You know, she was always telling me stuff. She just come over here, Ray.
Yeah.
Anyway, I, in my weird way, I'm blessed. I've been in the right place several times.
Mm-hmm. I got
and
you.
And I wouldn't have my belief pattern without it.
Mm-hmm.
My mother was, not officially, but unofficially, my mother was a social worker. Help people get the basics of life.
Right.
Start baseball teams, do the block club. And my mother was a serious activist, but, not a political thinker.
Right.
I got that down the street.
Right.
Way down the street.
So.
And also, she's the first woman I ever met that had a PhD.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know. I'm not sure I knew what a PhD was. Advanced degree.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm the first one in the family to go to college, and they urged me along with Doris McCree. Now you don't know who Doris McCree was, but her husband was Wade, W-A-D-E McCree, and he was the United States federal judge.
Okay.
And had been Solicitor General under Lyndon Baines Johnson, first term.
Right.
And then he became a federal judge, and they lived in Detroit. And they had class, and they were cool. And so I had these two opposing folks who weren't opposed to each other.
I understand what you mean.
He was establishment, and he was a ramrod and proper, and his wife was the head librarian at night in the downtown library. She worked 6 to 9, 5 days a week. And he was on the circuit court, so he was always away in Cincinnati. And so she worked at night, and she lived about 10 blocks from the library in downtown Detroit. And I used to walk her home. But then she got me I had 2 jobs. My very first job was mopping the floor in a Kresge dime store, which only lasted a couple days because the manager called me the N-word.
Mm.
And I poured the heavy bucket on his feet. I would have poured it on his head, but, I couldn't pick it up. And anyway, a little mess started, and Wade McCree, her husband, called up the head of SS Kresge's and told him if they prosecuted me, they'd be sorry. And then she got me my second job, and I was a 16-year-old kid, and I was put the books back on the shelf in the business library downtown. And she got me that job. And it was just so fascinating because they lived next door to May and Walter Reuther in this high-rise in downtown Detroit. So I used to run between their house and Grace and Jimmy Boggs' house. So it really was quite different. And Doris McCrae used to tell me, now don't tell them what went on here. You have to remember the FBI and the CIA were still very active.
Right.
In those days.
Right.
And she said, you don't tell them anything, and
I gotcha.
My husband's going to get very upset when the FBI come to visit. I'm sorry, I'm remembering things.
Mm-hmm.
But it was fascinating. I can't even begin to tell you how fascinating it was. At that, and for 3 years or so, I had this experience till I went to college.
I gotcha. So, in this new book, The Next American Revolution, I know she does talk about community gardens, and that's one element of it, which plays into food security issues that are, seems apparently going to be an issue in the coming years due to climate change. Any other stuff jump out at you?
Well, no, that's the stuff I like the most.
Okay.
See, I think you have to find people where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
and and then takes them forward. Also, you can help them.
Right.
This is not pie in the sky stuff. This is real. And by the way, you went to Detroit recently?
I have not.
So they have a security network farm, I think they call it. And it's a 2-acre farm in the city. It's a real farm. And they farm there, and it's a model for others. And now Detroit has thousands of vacant lots, and so they've encouraged people, to grow their own stuff. Mm-hmm. My sister grows tomatoes, and I think she was influenced by them. I should ask her. But she grows tomatoes, and hundreds of them, which she gives away 25% of them and sells 70, keeps 1% to eat, and then sells 75% of her tomatoes to her neighbors. Mm. And what she does is she goes to the store and sees what they're going to pound, and then she sells them for half price. And she told me she made about $800-900 last year. But it's a way of building community.
Right.
My sister's the tomato woman, and but she also teaches kids how to grow tomatoes. And people ask her if she's worried about competition, and she said, I'd like some. I'm never going to have any. Mm-hmm. Kids just grow 12 tomatoes, and that's it. And in that neighborhood, the rats, by the way, eat 10% of the crop.
Oh, wow.
Oh, they do. They're hungry. Mm-hmm. And so, I was thinking about this. And, I know that she got the idea from the security network folks. So I think this is working in Detroit. Mm. And, again, you've seen this in Boston. They do it in Baltimore. I don't know if any place they do it on a level, the kind of level we should be doing it on.
Yeah, I know small places. The most
on Gano.
I believe that's it.
All the way down.
Yeah, there's one behind that Dunkin' Donuts.
Behind the Dunkin' Donut.
The market beat next to that Dunkin' Donuts. There's one very small there. Okay. Community garden still, but there is a network.
Remember, there are lots of these. They just everybody has a small plot though, and barely enough to raise. I don't think anybody. You've seen the one at Brown?
No, but not personally.
So Brown has one and it has 24 plots, and so it's not enough to live off of yourself. And then there's nothing to sell and it's very, I'm going to get a plot there soon, just for fun. But they don't do the educational work that you would expect, and there's nobody to help you if you're crop. There's no education going along with the piece of land. And then also you have to wait. I'm going to sign up because it's like a 3-year wait. But there are not a lot of people waiting for it because, people, I was told, keep them on an average of 7 years. Mm-hmm. So you just have to wait 7 years. But it's not, I don't know. I'm really upset with myself that I'm not going to have a second life so I could do all these things I'd like to do. Because, for instance, I would like to pamphleteer on gardening. I really would. And people would do things if they paused to think about it. And maybe even if you gave them seeds and helped initiate the process. But even more so, they need a mentor. Mm-hmm. I'm out planting on Saturday and Sunday. I'm planting tulips. I bought 100 of them, which was a mistake. I haven't had any tulips in 10 years. And the reason I haven't tulips is because the last time I planted 100 tulips, squirrels came and ate them all. I think 99 of the 100. And it's very upsetting. And, of course, everyone told me what I needed to do. You need to cover the tulips. They only eat them now. They won't eat them in the spring when they're coming up. And that you need to cover them until the winter is over. to March 15th, and then you take the stone off. So I have planted 60 tulips this weekend. You talk about work, because they're 6.5 inches down at least. And my yard is full of rocks.
Mm.
But good exercise, and next fall, I'm going to plant a cash crop. I'm going to plant tomatoes.
Yep.
And sell half of them.
Yep.
Seriously, tulips you can't sell.
I know what you mean.
I could pull them up and run and hope somebody would buy a few. But anyway, we need to live differently. And I'm trying in a very small way, reduce my footprint on the earth. And it's very hard to do because I'm busy, because I want the freshest food, so I go to corporate Whole Foods, versus Stop and Shop where the food isn't as good. But not to say that it's good at Whole Foods. It's just better than those other places. But we should be pulling back from all of that. We really should. Everything should be more natural. We should be avoiding pesticides. I know what to do, but
it's the challenge of actually doing it.
Yes. And how do you spend your day? So I spent 3 hours on Saturday planning and 2 hours yesterday. And the minute I get off the phone with you, I'm going home, plant another 10. I'm going to plant 10 every day. I've got another 30 to plant. And so I'm going to plant, while it's 50 degrees, I'm going to plant another 10 every day. And then on Saturday, I'm going to plant a few tomatoes. That's my goal on Saturday. I'm very excited about it.
So I pulled up the table of contents, and chapter 1 of this book is these are times to grow our souls, and it seems we've talked about that. She then has another chapter called Revolution as a New Beginning. Any thoughts on that one?
No.
Okay.
By the way, some of this, and this goes way back with her, actually with both of them. They were always in favor of community banks and community grocery stores, and they were the first person, I believe he was the first person I ever heard say, don't shop in corporate store.
Okay.
And, and he used to say, and I don't remember her saying it, but maybe she did too, you should always walk to where you shop. I remember Detroit had thousands of shops and stores, and they were starting to disappear. They were starting to build the malls and those things. And they used to talk about this all the time. And Detroit also was the city of trees. I planted 3,000 trees on Belle Isle in the Island Park.
Okay.
I don't know where I got the idea from. I could attribute it to them. They were big on trees and all this intergenerational activity. Folks talk about this stuff, but they don't do it. I don't know if you see anything here. I don't. But they were into intergenerational activities.
Mm-hmm.
And we went from 12 to 88. Their group of friends and students and that they were mentors to. Now, I've tried this all my life, having 18 to 21-year-olds around, and it's very difficult.
Right.
But I got that from them. They believed in it. And as I said, for 3 years, I was a mentee. I sat on the windowsill. I every once in a while I had to do some work. But I'm sorry, I'm just thinking back and laughing.
And yeah, I see what you're talking. There is that lack of communal, intergenerational thinking ahead, even in a time when it seems like the environment makes people think that much farther.
But I also think we're in this selfish age.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't want to be too critical of Bernie, but I watched all these young people, you know, really for Bernie, and a lot of things that were for self.
Absolutely.
And I didn't see the worry about society. You know, I actually would hear people start talking about free college, and they really meant it. And then I would tell them I was in favor of it, but not for wealthy people. And then they yell at me.
Yeah.
You know, because they had this concept that, you know, college is never to be paid for. You know, the same concept I have about water, you know?
Yeah.
They had about college. And so, you know, Bernie Sanders had said publicly that he would be in favor of giving Donald Trump's son free college. And, you know, because he was, you know, going to be on the principle that things had to be free. And I would say, nope, I want to keep that money for early childhood education. I want to keep that for community college for, you know, people over 40 who need to go back to community college. And you only have so much resources.
And it was also, frankly speaking, a bit of selling an old hat like it's a new do, because without sending too much glory to one place, we used to have this free college. It was called Claiborne Pell and the Pell Grants.
Yes, until they got expensive. When college costs outstripped the Pell Grants. But, you know, there are places, California and New York, where we have free education before.
Right.
So, you know, Bernie wasn't dreaming anything up. He was just trying to, you know, get it for all 50 states plus. And I'm very much in favor of it. I think, you know, I have neighbors who make $125,000 and they have 2 kids and they're paying $25,000 each for them to go to Moses Brown, and it's killing them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really is. And, you know, when they get done with the 2 schools, you know, they got $30,000 to live on, and their taxes are $12,000. So, you know, I don't mean to feel sorry for the rich, but we have problems. You know, if you think they have problems, how about the rest of the population? So
yeah, and one of the things that
now could I say something big? You know, that I believe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the world needs, you know, humanistic type people, and they set big examples, and you also don't know who they're nurturing. And we don't know if Grace and Jimmy Boggs, you know, created, you know, 500 young people or 500 old people or, you know, or 5,000. You know, you just don't know how many folks they, you know, their theories and their actions. And these were people who did things besides just thinking. So you know, this is a life well lived.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, it really is. It's.
I got you.
Yeah, you know, I think all this workers' rights stuff they did alone would put them in the universe of goodness.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. You know, and I was telling you about my personal. You know, about them basically getting me out of jail the first time the cops snatched me. You know, that's really good stuff to go out and save a strange kid from trouble. And, you know, my family didn't know what to do. They really didn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I understand what you mean. And I understand because of the fact I've had several mentors in my life who have been that key intervention. So one of the last chapters in her book is a paradigm shift in our concept of education.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I have had several conversations in the past about education, public schooling, and all sorts of matters that tie into that. I'm curious if you have any thoughts coming out of the book, coming out of what you experienced with them, anything along those lines?
No, except I believe that radical changes are necessary.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everything we do in education, I think, is wrong. I mean, I hate to, I hate to be so all-encompassing. But, you know, I gave you the example that I'm told that the graduation rate, I need to check this out, from community college is about 12%.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's true, that's abject failure.
Right.
And if that's true over a number of years, it's obvious we need to do something new. And I don't think that anybody's thinking about it. People in power, people in the educational realm, government officials, the governor, they're just not thinking about it. And they certainly haven't, you know, gone beyond that.
Right.
To think about, you know, the multinational corporations and what they're doing to us. And, I mean, the wrong people are in charge. You know, I mean,
right.
You know, Grace Lee Boggs should be in charge. She's not here to be in charge, but they're not thinkers, and they're not thinking about the expansion of democracy. And you know, we're at this very bad moment. Just, you know, we're in a very bad moment. We're about to be in for a national government I believe we've never seen. And I didn't tell you what it's going to be like. It's just going to be different, and I'm not sure there's anything positive that's going to come out of it. I'm worried about what's going to happen on the foreign front. I'm worried about the domestic front. I'm worried about the educational front and civil rights front and women's rights. Just, I don't know. And you just think back to Grace Boggs, you know, this stuff in Detroit, you know, she's showing up there in the 50s and just a powerhouse for 40 years plus. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing a lot of research on what's going on with the education, at least the public education system, and this Common Core stuff is recently been criticized by, of all people, who came from a Roman Catholic policy analysis institution, and they point out and said, listen, this curriculum intentionally does not give any liberal arts orientation at all. Mm-hmm. And it's based around just making good workers, and it doesn't promote any sort of critical thinking skills that are typical of either the Roman Catholic parochial school or just plain liberal arts orientation. And that's pretty shocking. Very difficult times.
You know, I would, you know, something I wanted to look at is the parochial school. I was told about their graduation rates. You know, all these things I don't have time to stop and do. Mm-hmm. But that those schools are not failing miserable like the public schools. And it would be very interesting. I am going to look at them because I'm going to be involved with the next mayor of Providence's effort to improve the schools. But I think we need to define what an educational revolution would look like. Mm. And nobody stopped to do that. And I don't know. You know, I won't call this spiritual, but I'm interested in the beloved community theories of Dr. King, mm-hmm. in terms of creating a means by which to move forward. Right. And again, some of that is going to require more civility, more willingness to work with others, less protectionism for whatever exists. You know, I think we need a time of less name calling, so that even people who think that they're opposed to what should happen feel more comfortable.
Right.
Because I think they haven't thought it out.
Mm.
You know, I think all these working class white folks who are calling black people names subliminally or directly haven't thought out that we're in the same place. In fact, they're a slightly better place than most black people, but not enough to notice. And instead of, you think, and why would you be looking down to call people names? You should be looking up to the people who have their foot on your neck. And there's just so little education of that. Another disappointment with Bernie, not a big one, but a small one. At first I was shocked that he could be a socialist in public and get away with it, and even virtually no criticism. It was an unbelievable moment.
Mm-hmm.
But I also thought he never once explained his politics. And that was probably he was hiding.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm taking it as a criticism. There he had that platform, and he never did it. I wrote him a letter last Thursday or Friday suggesting he do it now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
While he can still grab national attention, and what is, I don't know.
It's a very interesting paradigm with Bernie Sanders.
Well, Bernie doesn't want to be the person I want him to be. Because Bernie might, in spite of his age, he might still think he can run in 4 years. And so I think Bernie's being a little too careful.
I'm already seeing mention on Facebook and different things of that sort.
Well, it's silly because Bernie's an old man who was able, and I don't mean old, but all three of them are at the height of electability. 4 years from now, they will all feel old. And presidency is not a job for an old man. I'm not talking about years. I'm talking about how you come to the party. Can you still dance? And I'm not sure. I watched Hillary. I watched them all very carefully, including Trump. And I think all of them are their age. There are no young ones in that group.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how old they are next time. And, Hillary's hinting she's done. And, we've heard her enough, and she's done. But Bernie, we'll see. He may try it. So I don't have anything else to say to you except I think it's very seldom in a lifetime that people come along, to push back dark clouds, and she did it. She did it for a lifetime. And, it's very helpful to have such people in the world. I always say this all the time when I meet people like Grace Lee Boggs. And I said this to her the last time I saw her, 15 years ago. It's so good to be in the world at the same time as you.
Wow.
I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just unbelievable because you could miss them completely, and then they're not real. And I think about my experiences,
mm-hmm.
and I don't know. I'm very lucky, just a very lucky person to have been influenced. And I wasn't thinking about it until last Thursday or Friday about their deep influence on me. Because, we all believe things that we come to all, whoever we are, by ourselves or through reading or something. And life doesn't work that way. You're affected and influenced by other human beings. And I think they had real influence on me.
I understand. I'm going to turn the recorder off.
Good.